Back on February 9th, the president said that he would be presenting a phenomenal tax plan in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Tomorrow is April 1st. We haven't seen that tax plan. Can you tell us when the president's going to present his plan?
I think, as you noticed yesterday, Secretary Mnuchin and Gary Cohn and others on the team talked to the president about the process, and I think that we are working on engaging with key stakeholders. And when we feel it's appropriate, that the president has given the appropriate amount of feedback, we'll start to put out the appropriate, outline and process that we envision. But at this time, that discussion is ongoing. We recognize, as you know, we anticipated fully being engulfed in healthcare right now, and I think that we're accelerating that. The president's got his team working overtime. He's been giving them feedback as far as what he wants to see and how he wants to see it. But this is a big task. It's taken 30 years, and we're going to get to it.
White House going to write its own proposal here, or is this going to be like the healthcare debate where we thought we were going to see a proposal from the White House, but in the end, the president sort of signed on to Paul Ryan's plan?
Well, first I would dispute that we signed on to someone's plan. We worked with the House, as you know from the president's statements. We were very on board. I would suggest to you to say that we signed on to a plan. It was a work that both sides worked together on. We worked with the Senate as well. And I think this plan, I would assume that hopefully we come up with a plan that we all agree on. The president will put out principles, I'm sure, as we've already done, in terms of what his goals are and how he wants to drive this as the process moves forward. But I'm sure that we're going to have a robust debate about aspects of that plan, certain provisions and certain other tax pieces, but we're going to work with the House and the Senate on it.
Why will the White House not be releasing the president's 2016 tax return?
The president's been very clear about his tax returns and his position on that. The Office of Government Ethics requires every federal employee at a certain level to file these financial disclosure forms that anyone in America can go on to. It'll be the first time, I believe, and I don't want to get ahead of the background briefing and give away the good stuff, but I believe that this is the first time that they're on the White House website. We are making them more accessible and more available than in history. These lists, just for everyone who's not familiar with them, the financial disclosure forms that we file, I think it's called a 278, reveal every asset you own, every debt that you have, your spouse's income, your spouse's employment.
So does the president think that Mike Flynn is guilty of a crime?
I think he believes that Mike Flynn should go testify. He thinks that he should go up there and do what he has to do to get the story out.
Is the White House concerned that General Flynn has damaging information about the president, his aides, his associates, about what occurred during the campaign with respect to Russia?
Nope.
Okay.
Fox News has been told by intelligence officials that Chairman Nunes is aware of who did the unmasking of certain individuals in the transition and may be aware of who ordered the unmasking of those individuals. Is the White House aware of that information?
I don't know what he knows, in the sense that that's and again, I've tried to make it a comment not to get into the specifics of that report. I will not. I think it's not in our interest to talk about the process. What occurred between Chairman Nunes and coming here was both routine and proper. Chairman Nunes and Ranking Member Schiff, who I understand is expected here later today, both possess the appropriate credentials and clearances. We've invited Democrats here, and I've been told that material they will see will shed light on the investigation.
Intelligence officials also tell us that Chairman Nunes knew about the documents that he viewed at the White House back in January, but ended up looking at them at the NSC SCIF only because he could not get access to those same documents through some of the other intelligence agencies. Basically, it was a last resort to come here to the White House to view them. Do you know if that is the case?
I don't, but I do think that it tracks everything that's been, I saw a couple tweets the other day that I mentioned where people were saying that the NSA was trying to get documents. And from a narrative of what's been out there, and again, we've been trying to be very careful about this and try to be consistent about how we want this handled. But everything that he has said, when he came out initially and talked to the media, he made it very clear that he had been looking into this. He had stated this much earlier than the president ever had raised this issue about surveillance and the unmasking of individuals for areas that had nothing to do with Russia.
Mr. Nunes was on the campus. You say we don't know who let him in the gate, so
right.
Apparently it is, and you described, I believe, this is a normal process, right? Tell me if it is normal the way that I am describing it. Mr. Nunes, the head of an investigatory committee, is allowed to roam around the executive complex, we don't know who let him in, to speak to two deputy-level members of the National Security Council. He is then allowed to see information. He then obtains an appointment from my understanding of the chronology with the President of the United States to disgorge that information. He then goes public with that information. Then 7 or so days later, you say it would be appropriate for everybody to come down here and look at it. Is that a normal process?
Well, I would take issue with a number of the aspects of your chronology. Number one, which you're forgetting, is that initially he is the one that publicly said, well before any of this came to light in terms of the president's March 5th tweet, that he was just looking into this whole matter. He, according to John Roberts, his own reporting, just said that neither of those individuals, as described in your paper's reporting, are accurate. So I would dispute several of the pieces of that. And then as far as him roaming around the White House.
Man, so
No,
you
I
don't
understand this, but you, again, you jump to a ton of conclusions about, and again, I love watching some of these shows where they jump to conclusions for all, hold on.
Several times prejudged the investigation is clearing the White House. You've said it twice at the podium today.
Right.
So we're
what
not
I'm saying is
prejudging.
because I'm focused on the substance of this, Glenn. I'm actually, right. And so where's any of the reporting been in your paper about Evelyn Farkas and her revelation that this is what they sought to do? Where has been the reporting in your paper that NBC News just recently covered that other officials? You seem to be really focused on who showed up where and what door they went in and how it happened. To answer your question, yes, it's appropriate for a member of Congress to contact someone who has contacted him according to some of these reports. I don't know the answer to that, but if you're asking me, is it appropriate for a member of Congress to come over here? As Chairman Nunes has said himself, he wasn't hiding or roaming. He was asked to come over here by an individual. He came over, which happens daily. He was asked to go somewhere. He went there. He is cleared. And nothing that is inappropriate, and exactly the opposite. What he did, what he saw, and who he met with was 100% proper.
Did the Chief of Staff, who is, in my understanding, an exceptionally attentive gatekeeper to who comes in and out of the Oval Office, did the Chief of Staff know that he was on the campus? Did he approve his
So
clearing
remember,
for the way
you're
it's-
okay, but you're playing cute there. You're doing two things. One is you're talking about the Oval Office, and the other one is the campus. Right? So, no, the Chief of Staff does not know every single person who's on the 18 acres at any given time. We all found out, you, me, everyone else, that he was coming down here after he held a press conference with your colleagues to say he was coming down here based on stuff that he'd found that didn't have to do with Russia, that a whistleblower source had given him. Now, the other reporting that I'm hearing today is actually that the sources that you describe in your paper are not accurate. And while I'm not going to comment on either, I think there is an assumption that everything and the chronology that we know over is accurate, which I don't believe from further reporting that it is. And I also believe that some of the comments that have come out publicly in terms of some of the Obama administration are conveniently left out of that discussion. I think that that is interesting how no one seems to really cover the fact that in a senior Obama administration with high-level clearances talked about the spreading of classified information for political purposes, and no one seems to care.
It sounds like you are, just as the president is, alleging that the Obama administration conducted unlawful surveillance on the Trump campaign and Trump transition team.
What I am saying very clearly is that
You
as
have evidence of that.
No. What I don't. I know that what has been provided to, as I said in the statement, I believe that what has been provided and will be provided to members of the both committees, I think should further their investigation. I think that the revelations of Evelyn Farkas, who played a senior role in the Obama administration, going on the record to talk about how they politically used classified information is troubling. I believe that the reports that are coming out day by day, that NBC just reported, that John just detailed, what Fox has reported, day by day, more and more we are seeing that the substance of what we've been talking about continues to move exactly in the direction that the president spoke about in terms of surveillance that occurred. On March 2nd, day before the president's tweet, comments by a senior administration official, foreign policy expert Dr. Evelyn Farkas, together with previous reports that have been out, raised serious concerns on whether or not there was an organized and widespread effort by the Obama administration to use and leak highly sensitive intelligence information for political purposes.
My understanding is that Dr. Farkas left the administration in 2015. So
Okay.
why is what she said in 2017 relevant to something that allegedly happened in 2016?
The question I would have for you is exactly, why is it? What is she says in her things, I'm urging my colleagues, I'm urging it to get the Hill, but it's odd that the presumption seems to be, why is it interesting? Have you asked her? My point is you seem to be rushing to her defense At some point, she went on television and talked about actions that she and her colleagues took to spread classified information. And instead of defending her, it might be worth asking her what she's talking about, who she spread it to, why she did it, was it appropriate, who cleared her to do it. Maybe those are questions that can ask instead of asking me to defend why a former Obama administration official is revealing stuff that should be extremely concerning. So I'm going to go back to Tamara.
One other question, which is, are you more concerned about that or Russian interference in the presidential election?
I think if someone's interfering with our election, that's not good. I don't think that someone revealing and leaking classified information is good either. I'm not sure that you should have to choose. I think that you can have outrage and concern for both. And I don't think we should have to pick as an American whether or not which freedom we want to have undermined.
First, just to follow up on something you said before, you said that Hillary Clinton had personal contact with Vladimir Putin, and the suggestion was that wasn't necessarily appropriate. Can you just elaborate what you were
No,
referring to?
I'm not saying that's the contact of it in itself is not appropriate, is not.
As a private citizen or as a...
No. I think what I'm saying is that when you talk about connections to Russia, I think the only connection that anyone's made with President Trump is multiple years ago. He hosted a pageant there, and he owns condos around the world, and some of them were sold to some Russians, and I think he sold a house to one several years back. That's his connection. When you talk about the other side, you look at what the Obama administration's connections were. You have a Secretary of State that was selling a fifth of our country's uranium. You have a Clinton Foundation concern with some of the donations they got. You've got the former president, her husband, giving paid speeches, getting a personal call from Vladimir Putin. You've got a stated goal of their of that administration, of Secretary Clinton, to have a reset to, quote, strengthen Russia. So when you compare the two sides in terms of who's actually engaging with Russia, trying to strengthen them, trying to act with them, trying to interact with them, it is night and day between our actions and her actions, and yet no one questioned what she was doing or how she was handling it. And yet,
Her pattern of behavior is more suspicious than President Trump's.
I think that if you compare the two, it's definitely, when you talk about the stuff that went to their foundation, the concerns that existed around the sale of 1/5 of all the country's uranium, the paid speeches, the personal calls from Vladimir Putin, I think that when you want to look at a connection to Russia, there is a clear one there and much less of one that ever existed on this side.
President Trump signed an executive order that intends to deny funding to cities that refuse to share immigration status information. And will that money be reallocated to other departments like Department of Education or HBCUs?
Well, I would say that the president finds it unacceptable that some localities and counties and potentially some states have prioritized a political agenda over the safety of their people by flouting our nation's immigration laws, becoming so-called sanctuary cities. With respect to the budget piece, I think we've got an ongoing budget process, and we'll have to see how many states comply and where, if any, potential savings are there, and then how we reallocate them.
Chicago receives about $12 million a year in law enforcement assistance from the federal government. Would President Trump cut off those funds?
I think it would be interesting to want to send more money to a city that is allowing people to come into the country who are breaking the law, who in many cases are committing crimes, member of gangs, and so you can't be a sanctuary city and at the same time seem to pretend or express concern about law enforcement or ask for more money when probably a number of the funds that you're using in the first place are going to law enforcement to handle the situation that you've created for yourself.
During
Yes.
the campaign, he suggested that on day one he would declare China a currency manipulator. He hasn't done that. Why hasn't the president followed through on that campaign promise?
I think we need to have that meeting with President Xi. I'm sure that there'll be a lot of discussions about our economic relationship, and so we are days away from that, and let's see what those. I just don't want to prejudge. We're days away from it, and I know there's a lot of issues that need to come up, and I don't want to get in front of it.
Does the administration plan to order a review into China's status as a non-market economy?
At this time, the two trade executive orders that focus on the countervailing duties and are where we're going to look. I think we've got a lot. Obviously, that's an issue that we would probably hope to have the U.S. Trade Representative confirmed. But that's a combined decision. I think that in consultation with both the Department of Commerce and the Department of Treasury. But let's see how we go first.
The president yesterday said that the meeting next week with China will be a difficult one. Why is it going to be so difficult, as he says?
Well, there's big issues. I don't think it's a surprise to anybody in terms of we've got both national security issues in terms of our political posture towards North Korea, the threat of a missile that extends further and further, the tests that they're using, their nuclear capability. Those should all be very concerning. And then on the trade front, we've got serious concerns with what they're doing, our trade practices with them, some of the things that were mentioned in the past. But I mean, there's a lot of areas that we need to be concerned about with trade.
Does he want to see this 90-day review first before getting to NAFTA?
I think the first thing he wants to do is get Robert Lighthizer confirmed as the next U.S. trade representative so that we can have someone at the helm of that agency to really shepherd the trade agenda and help put the priorities. I know that Peter and Secretary Ross were here yesterday, and Secretary Ross and Secretary Mnuchin and others have been very involved in the trade agenda, but we really need someone at the front of the ship to help us guide us through, and that review and others are part of that.
Really, what is really the end game for Mr. Assad when the president speaks to his allies, his NATO partners? I mean, obviously, Assad is not going to retire somewhere in the south of France. Something's got to give. What is the thought there? What is the disposition, the conversation in terms of Assad, who is very close to Mr. Putin, who would like to have a warm water port in the Mediterranean?
I think we believe there's a need to de-escalate violence and to have a political process through which Syrians will decide their own political future consistent with the principles that have been enshrined in UN Security Council Resolution 2254. But there's a bit of, as I mentioned just a second ago, there's a bit of reality on the ground in terms of what the options are.
What is the president's personal view on the aftermath for transgender people and the ways they should approach it?
I think that the president's made it clear this issue came up when Caitlyn Jenner in particular came to Trump Tower, and he said he didn't really care. But I think it is a state and local issue, not one that he believes needs federal attention. With that, thank you guys very much. We're going to get on to the next briefing. Thank you very much.